Welcome back to Hearthstone Grandmasters for the Asia Pacific region. We just got a good look at Tom kind of destroying Rivius with his control shaman there. It didn't really look all too fair right at the end there, but I think we can all agree Tom was playing some pretty good Hearthstone to get to that point. But now that we are done with our middle of the range for Division A, both at 4 and 4, we're over to Staz and che0nsu, who are both sitting pretty close to the bottom. I believe they're actually last place and second to last place with che0nsu and Staz respectively here. So for either player here, it's the chance to start turning things around, getting up to those higher points, because only halfway through, it's not over for either of these players, but it's a pretty uphill journey.
Yeah, it's definitely still possible, I think, for both players to qualify, technically.
Right.
But at the same time, it's going to be starting to be very unlikely, and it depends a lot on how other players end up doing and potential tiebreakers towards the end, if they manage to get a very good streak here. And there's not really any relegation this season, so it's going to be only really about just making the turning point now and proving themselves, right? Because I imagine that them not having success now is probably, they're a bit sad about it, right? So they really want to prove themselves and do well here, yeah.
That's right. As we are ready to take a look at the decks here, I made a little mistake before the break when I was asking you about mid-range hunter trying to fill some time. It's the mech hunter for che0nsu, which we'll get onto right after Staz's kind of Burgle Shark Rogue, I suppose. There is not really a discrete name for this deck anymore. Actually, I guess it's Water Rogue with the Sea Giants, your baby hunter race.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't really matter too much, but yeah, you could call it Water Rogue, you could call it Temper Rogue, you could call it Burgle Rogue. It's kind of whatever. But he has the Sea Giant package in there, which potentially actually is pretty good versus the Mech Hunter build, because Mech Hunter is a type of deck that often goes very wide, and it doesn't necessarily trade into all of Rogue's minions. It wants to go face a lot. And what you do with the Mech Hunter is that you just stack up a bunch of annoying mechs, and mechs you don't really want to kill. And that plays very good into the Sea Giant. So we can see that the Sea Giant will really pay up for stats in this series, I think.
I think it will. A lot of the other things that can work in your favor is just the huge amount of tempo that you can develop if you can get a sap to hit, like you said, on one of those big mech minions that they go a little bit too tall on. Or even just the early game tempo that Rogue is so famous for. Backstab the SI7 agent, and Spirit of the Shark can be actually pretty difficult for the hunter to clear off a lot of the time. As we are moving on to take a look at this this mech hunter that we have from che0nsu, a pretty lean build of the deck. Obviously the recently released Snip Snap making a pretty front and center performance in it.
Yeah, so here we're gonna see che0nsu's mech hunter. I would say that it's pretty standard from what we've seen a lot of the other weeks. For example, Silvername bringing Mech Hunter a lot of the weeks, even though he didn't have too much success with it. Mech Hunter in general is a deck that I've seen not much success at all. I also believe that in Vegas it performed very poorly. So seeing people still being on the Mech Hunter and believe in it is actually very surprising to me personally. But we see that people are still bringing it, and with the used inclusion of the Snip Snap, it's definitely a stronger deck. But it's proven that it's very volatile and haven't performed very well in previous weeks, so we will see if it pays off for his che0nsu here. He definitely did not hit the matchup he wanted, because Rogue is generally recently been very strong versus all the different hunter archetypes.
I mean, you're doing a very good job of being very diplomatic here and being a very professional caster, Casper. I think we can both agree we just don't like Mech Hunter at the moment, though. Like, it's just been doing terribly recently. Like, I think it was the only deck to have been brought multiple times in Grandmasters that hadn't picked up a win. Like, it was 0-10 at one point, and then, like you said, in Masters Tour Vegas as well, also doing very poorly. I just don't really know, like, what are you trying to hit with the Mech Hunter? Is it an anti-warrior deck?
Well, I don't know.
It doesn't even do that well against that.
Well, personally, I don't like it either too much. Like, people say that it's an anti-warrior deck or an anti-mage deck.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if it beats either, to be honest.
Me neither.
So I don't know, but people are clearly having success with it in practice, because even though we see Grandmaster every weekend, we see all these players, Grandmaster is still pretty low sample size. We're not playing a lot of games compared to how much a lot of the players do practice all of these matchups. So even though we're playing very high quality Hearthstone there, the sample size could trick you. And it could be that decks that are performing a bit poorly might actually be way better in practice and are just unfortunate because of low sample size here.
Yeah, I mean, this could be the turning point for Mech Hunter. We have here che0nsu on the Mech Hunter. Later on today, when we're done with Asia Pacific and Europe in Americas, there's Zalay on his pretty interesting Mech Hunter, in which he switches out one card in each of his secondary and tertiary decks.
Yeah, it's an interesting way of approaching the specialist format by Soleil there, by changing only one card. I believe the idea is that he just thinks that his main deck is very good.
Yeah.
And what he does is that he basically has 3 different tech cards.
Right.
And you kind of force your opponent to play around all of them, and they're all very different.
Yeah.
So it puts your opponent in a pretty weird situation, I guess.
Right, yeah. I mean, that's a story for another time, as we are ready to jump into this game. Staz and che0nsu pretty much fighting to have any chance whatsoever of going through to the top 3 playoffs in Season 1 of Grandmasters. For che0nsu, obviously even more difficult at a pretty abysmal 1-7 record.
Yes, 1-7 is definitely not where you want to be in
Indeed.
hope for qualification, and especially in APAC, in Asia now, where we have players that are performing clearly better than other players.
Yes.
It's way less likely that it will end up with a tiebreaker, which is way more likely in Europe now. Because in Europe, how it currently stands, a 7-7 record could qualify you, but it's still unlikely.
Yes,
but
at the end of
here it's extremely unlikely, so che0nsu is most likely not going to make it at this point, but he has to win every single game to make it.
You're obviously saying that Hunter is at a 4-4 record and sitting at 3rd place as it currently stands.
Yes, only a tiebreaker away from 2nd place. So yeah, the EU division is very close right now.
It is indeed. That's a good way of putting it. As we've been getting in pretty slow few turns for Staz here right at the start. Not being on the coin obviously makes it a lot more difficult for you to activate these combo cards that we all know so well, like the Miscreant and the SI7 agent. But considering he's not on the coin, it's really not that bad of a starting hand.
Yeah, he has the Blink Fox together with Vendetta, and the Vendetta works very well with comboing his Miscreant for the next turn. And what that does is that it essentially gives him more lackeys in being able to combo stuff every single turn from that on right. So having the Vendetta and the Miscreant for the next turn is going to be super important. Also, we hear that che0nsu ended up getting the Galvanizer out with 4 Mexian hands, so max value there. And that's going to be pretty strong for him the next couple of turns. It's not that good this turn because he couldn't really make use of it, but next turn is going to be really good.
I mean, I guess this makes sense though, right? Because even though he's floating a mana by not playing the Explodinator, like, the amount of useful stats that Explodinator puts on the board is really low. Whereas Snip Snap, the amount of stats it puts on the board is very high for its mana cost. So I think like stopping your opponent from value trading into your Galvanizer is actually pretty important there.
Yeah, it's also worth to mention that che0nsu did kind of say no to a potential curve he had there with the Explodinator into the double Ursachan, into the double Snip Snap.
That's true.
So he prefers the tempo, which is just a fair thing to do. I think that in the matchup, if the Mechaner ever gets behind, it becomes super hard for him to win. So he's just focusing a lot on the tempo right here and not for potential max value of every single card in every single turn.
So you're saying that a deck that runs 1 proactive 1-drop, if it gets behind on board, can just lose.
Yeah, that is what I'm saying. He does run the missile launcher and Venomizer combo. So he has that potential to get back.
That's true. And maybe I'm being a little bit harsh. Like, because again, in Grandmasters, it's not like Masters Tour Las Vegas where you had to try and predict the entire field and counter that. You have to predict your 2 opponents. You have to predict what they're going to bring and try and counteract that. But I mean, it seems like che0nsu has not had much success there either this week with Staz bringing the Rogue.
Yeah, but che0nsu is off to a very good start. He gets his Ursachan out, which is both 2 mana treaties right now, and at the same time a bunch of value because you draw the mix from it. So he's getting off pretty good. Even with early aggressive start for Staz with both the Blink Fox, Vendetta, and the Edwin, he still doesn't feel in a very good situation here because it's pretty hard for him to activate the hands. And it might be that he has to take a turn off, creating some lackeys to make his hand cleaner for the next couple of turns. So what do you like to do here, Derek?
I mean, it's kind of gone from really smooth to pretty tough to play these cards effectively, right? Because, like, I guess like the things that I'm looking at is like Freezing Trap plus SI7 agent allows you a pretty nice trade on the Galvanizer. But
at the
obviously
same time,
that's the Snip Snap death route.
Yeah, so then you just proc that with. Yeah, that doesn't sound amazing.
It doesn't sound great. I mean, so what? Cable Rat and then SI, I guess?
It might be that he just wants to take a turn at generating lackeys, but that doesn't feel incredible, I would say.
Like,
so
he can't protect the Edwin on this turn, right? No matter what, even if he goes for this line of play, which doesn't summon the Snip Snap Death Rattle.
It's very interesting to see what he decides to do here, if he goes for the trade or that. So what he's doing here is basically that he's making it very... No, he can't, that doesn't even... The Cable Rat is not a... It's not a lackey.
Yeah.
So he's just fighting for the board, really, and he thinks that his win condition isn't through going face, it's just over time being able to compete with the board. Because he does have the Togwaggle, and together with lackeys now, that will most likely happen over 2 turns.
Right.
And if he gets that out and is not under too much pressure, it's very hard for che0nsu to get back.
Yeah, yeah, and I don't know, because like from Staz here, by trading here, what it does do is that it makes magnetization a little bit weaker for che0nsu, because if he wants to kill off the Edwin, obviously there's little point in magnetizing as well, so I can see the merit for that. But at the same time, for Staz, like if he had just gone face there, and then like Freezing Trap was looking like it might be really strong in the next couple of turns if che0nsu is then quote-unquote baited into going for a big magnetized minion.
Yeah.
It was close though, it was close.
I like the play from Staz, I think, because it just weakens the overall magnetize potential and he doesn't get any rust, because he really wants to kill the Edwin here.
Yes, yes.
Even though it might be correct for him to just ignore it and just magnetize, but I'm not sure. It just makes too much sense to kill the Edwin, I think. And also, if you decide to go for a huge magnetized turn, you just end up being way too weak to the sap inclusion that we see Staz drawing here. So I think Staz just wants to develop more now and spread wide with lackeys. Here we could potentially see, if he had it, he would have had a 0 mana Sea Giant, but he does not have it in his hand. So we see the power of Sea Giant in this matchup, where che0nsu is often forced to spread wide with small minions, and when it doesn't trade into the rogue small minions, which is pretty hard for him, you just end up in these board situations where Sea Giant just locks the board.
Yeah, yeah.
So that would have been very strong for him, but he doesn't have it, so it doesn't really matter too much. So now Staz has to decide if he wants to play this Sap or this Freezing Trap, which are both not very good on board right now.
Well, does he want to play either? Like, Sap,
I'm not even sure if he wants to
garbage.
play any lackey here. It might be that he just wants to hero power, because
Yeah, that's reasonable.
if you play one lackey, you kind of want to play both lackeys, and at the same time, you don't really want to play both lackeys, because then you can't Togwaggle next turn every single time. So I think that hero power would be like a pretty big consideration there, but he decides to just go for one of the lackeys.
Is going face now the way to go about it though? Because like obviously trading does not deny che0nsu the magnetic effect, which is the primary reason for trading with the Edwin last turn. But I guess he's winning the damage race, because my main concern for Staz at this point is that he will just be taking too much damage if he doesn't start trading.
I mean, he just has to ask himself what is che0nsu's power plays then if this trade provides him anything, because missing 3 damage, even though it doesn't really seem like that is the game plan he's going for, is an incredibly big deal.
That's fair.
So now Staz really wants to go for the Togwaggle.
He also wants to go for the Sap, but I think I agree that Ethereal Lackey Togwaggle.
He also wants to go for the Freezing Trap.
Yeah.
He wants to do a lot of different stuff.
But like, I think the setup of Ethereal Lackey Togwaggle this turn and then Shark plus Crown next, Shark plus Wand next turn means you're pretty likely to get some very, very cheap Battle Cry minions or combo minions to go with the Shark.
So we currently have 3 options here. Most of the time I would probably go for the Shiv. I know that board control would probably argue for the raiding party, but it's probably the Shiv.
Shots fired at your stuff.
I think Shiv is the best option here, because you just want to be flexible as Staz here, and the raiding party is a bit too expensive when it doesn't run preparation in his deck.
Yeah.
I don't really think any of the options were amazing, but I think that
It's
if
gotta
he
be one,
was
right?
to choose one of them, he just wants to go for the cheap one. That
Oh,
could also be
out of the
reactive.
spells, yeah.
Yeah.
I thought you were talking about the Togwaggle options there, and I was going to say, if you want anything other than Wand, I will call you crazy.
It's always one.
It's always Wand. I remember like day one when Togwaggle came out, it was like crown every time. Like everyone was just spam clicking crown, and then people realized, wait a second,
This only gives 2/2.
3 is good. Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah. It's true. Like, what is it? Like, there's like four rogue legendaries that are 2/2s, right? Because it's like Edwin, Face Collector, Grawl the Shark.
I think there's 3 rogue legendaries at 2/2.
Yeah, yeah.
Rogue
There's a bunch.
Rogue legendaries in general are very low stat.
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
How it works with crown is that you're more likely to discover class legendaries
Yes.
than you are to, or I mean your class legendaries, you are to discover any other legendaries. So most of the time you will end up with rogue options, and if you're in a scenario where you get 3 rogue options, a lot of the time it's just very bad. Yeah. And at the same time with this deck where you runs the sea giants and stuff, the one just a lot of the time is just way more pressure than the crown. So it's just cycles and way more pressure. So it's just better in general. Yeah.
It's kind of crazy to think how much better High Sparrow and Togwaggle would be in like any other class, right? Because you could discover different
It's
class
also a
legendaries.
pretty cool play from che0nsu here, where he goes for that magnetization with
That is pretty cool.
with the missile launcher, and then
Killing off the
together with the
spider
spider bomb, and then kills off the Togwaggle. That was pretty cool.
And it does mean that this damage is really starting to add up for che0nsu now.
Yes.
Staz is going to have to make a very, very powerful turn very soon.
I think that Staz is probably going to lean towards a sap turn here, because he might have to, and then next turn he goes in with the frog.
I mean, he didn't actually have to play.
Oh, that's an incredibly strong draw.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's really good. But
So
he didn't have to play the one this turn, right? He could have gone Sap, Freezing Trap, Spirit of the Shark on this turn instead.
Can that die ever? Does it never die then?
It dies to exactly Venomize it, right?
Yes, that would be really bad. But I think that at the same time, this is pretty strong, especially with that Vendetta pickup here.
Yes.
Because
yeah,
he could
That's
set
big.
up an insane Spirit of the Shark turn next turn, where he basically heals the full. But I'm not sure how much he wants to do the sap though, because the sap is incredibly valuable. So he might be just goes for the freezing trap instead.
Does he want to take another 5 damage though? Like, that's so bad.
Well, if he goes for the freezing trap, he's not going to take any damage.
Oh right, I see, I see. I thought you were looking at the alternative being Spirit of the Shark plus Life Drinker. But this seems good. Like anything
I'm
that
not
stops
sure.
him taking damage, I think I like.
I'm not sure if this life drinker is worth it.
I mean, he can step it. He can step it, and he's got
Could
another
he
one in
potentially
hand.
die there versus a Leroy turn? If che0nsu had no, he couldn't die, right?
He was at 9 health, so Leroy Hero Power didn't kill him.
Yeah, and Leroy Unleash also didn't kill him.
Yeah.
And Leroy Bombtas didn't kill him. So I don't think he could have died.
I don't
but
think
it
he
would have
could've
been really close.
Like, I don't think he could have died there. I think it's just that getting the 3/3 on board is pretty important, right? Because next turn, if he really needs the healing and he can't afford to spend the 4 on the other Life Drinker, he can step it and play it again with the Spirit of the Shark.
Yes,
and
but at the same time, he could have gotten that healing from just the next turn, right? He could have went just Spirit of the Shark
double life
because this was a 0 mana Life Drinker, so it didn't
yeah,
cost
yeah,
any
yeah,
mana
yeah.
essentially.
Yeah, but it can trade on this turn. I think is like the main.
Yes, but
concern.
if you trade with it, you can't step it.
Unless you
Unless
take
you
the
value
VT.
The VT, you always VT.
You AVT, dude.
But yeah, it's an interesting decision. So he's just I mean, it's fair. He just values having the trade option a lot.
Yeah.
And again, it was also a very close decision if you're supposed to sap there. He could have went for the freezing trap instead.
Also true. And I mean, it would have been pretty good, right?
If he had the freezing trap out, he would have had. I mean, I think that sap is a better card than the freezing trap. So,
Right.
if che0nsu ends up attacking, which I think is very likely, because even though you can put it in freezing trap, you can also put it on any other secret.
Right.
So, having sap instead of freezing trap is way better, because sap is like one of the better cards because he always has to magnetize stuff.
I agree.
But yeah, it's a hard decision, I think. So
I mean,
I don't mind what he did.
It's also worth bearing in mind that che0nsu does not know that this secret is a freezing trap, right? Like, once it's played for Staz, che0nsu might think he's in a bad situation, and so he has to just risk magnetizing on.
Yes, a lot of that.
Which could be terrible. for
Again, like, he doesn't know it's a freezing trap. From all che0nsu knows, like, Staz has no answer to the current board, and he just has to go for the bluff.
him. Right.
And Staz would have been dead
Right.
if that wasn't the freezing trap.
Yeah.
So, again, che0nsu has to make the decision that, oh, I can beat freezing trap here.
Right.
And that's not always a very easy call for him to make. So I think there was a lot of consideration for the freezing trap, but at the same time the sap was very strong that turn. So it's hard. I'm not sure what was the better line.
It very much is. As
Okay, now he decides to go for the freezing trap. Again, this freezing
Okay,
trap
okay.
is representing a lot of different secrets. And there's no information that is freezing.
Was this the best line of play from Staz? Like, I feel like using the Frost Shock and the Freezing Trap on the same turn was like quite a lot of use of a lot of really good cards, right? Like, because so if he freezes the 0-2 instead of the 5-6, it's super obvious that he's representing Freezing Trap, right? Which is, I think, a little bit too much of a tell. But che0nsu here, like, I don't know. I think Staz could have just relied on the fact that Freezing Trap would be good here.
Yes, I'm also a bit curious about this. He's not found time to play this Spirit of the Shark yet. And che0nsu does, with no missile launchers left, he actually has 0 answer to the Spirit of the Shark.
True.
So if the Spirit of the Shark gets out and it just sticks and generates more and more value for the upcoming turn, it's going to be so hard for Staz to lose. So it might have been he was able to fit in the Spirit of the Shark one of these turns and still survive, but at the same time, he had to be kind of reactive against the board. So again here, che0nsu deciding to go for a pretty fancy play, kill off his own Spider Bomb with the Bomb Toss. It's pretty cool.
Is that too fancy though? Like,
right, that's the question you have to ask, right?
like it looks cool, obviously, but how important is it to kill off this 4-3? Like, I don't know. Pointing that face seemed pretty good, right? Like the Bomb Toss, you just get him that much closer to lethal. He's already played the Life Drinker, so you have no idea that he has the second one.
Okay, so now che0nsu doesn't have too much pressure anymore, and also we have the Freezing Trap developed. So now Staz sees his opportunity to play the Spirit of the Shark, which I like a lot.
And I mean, like Staz with this setup actually, because he deals what 6 damage this turn, which is down to 13. If he top decks Leroy on the next turn, he has lethal.
Yeah. Also, funnily enough, these bombs potentially might work bad for him because it's super hard for him to activate all the bombs.
It is, yeah.
And potentially for later, with Leroy Unleash turns, which is one of the biggest burn turns he can have, he has less board slots for the hounds.
But he's, sorry, che0nsu was tracked over the Leroy. Leroy was in his first tracking of the game.
Oh, yeah.
So Leroy's out.
Yeah.
It's still available for Staz, but I believe che0nsu does not have a Leroy in the deck.
Yeah, but we just see the power of the Spirit of the Shark here. It's
yes, yeah. I mean, this was insane.
Not only healing, he's also pushing 12 damage to his opponent, right? So now che0nsu immediately has to go on the defensive plan. And
yeah, that was actually insane.
We also see that the secret has not been procced yet, so it could still be Snake Trap, it could still be Explosive Trap.
He plays around it in the best way possible, though.
Yes, he does, but he still just loses because there's just too much pressure. Also, I said there's no more answer to the Spirit of the Shark. He doesn't run any removal for stealth minions besides the Missile Launcher plus Venomizer combo. So
or the Spider Bomb plus Bomb Toss combo, which has already come down.
Yeah, we really just see the value of the Spirit of the Shark here. Kind of just sealing the game, being super powerful.
I mean, Staz was 1 damage off of lethal before he found himself the perfect Leroy Jenkins to close things out. As for che0nsu, I mean, I don't know. This is the thing I feel about Mech Hunter is his starting hand there was that was the juice, right? Like that was such a good starting hand. He hit the Galvanizer on a whole bunch of mechs. He hit the double copy of Ursatron as well to refill his hand. There was a lot of stuff that was really going right for him there, but it still wasn't enough to fight back against the Rogue's insane combos with Battle Cries.
Yes, I would argue that they both had pretty good starts there. The
true.
Rogue had the Blink Fox Vendetta Miscreant hand, which is also pretty strong, but yeah, this is like the type of hands you would assume that Mech Hunter would perform with.
Yeah.
But again, I think that this matchup is a very bad matchup for the Mech Hunter, and it clearly showed there that it just wasn't able to keep up the pressure, and Rogue just managed to stabilize when they got the Spirit of the Shark out together with the Togwaggle, reduced minions, and it just was a super difficult game for che0nsu, even though he also had 4 reductions with the Galvanizer. So it's pretty insane, but maybe it'll prove itself better in the upcoming games now.
I mean, there were some different lines he could have taken as well. Like, it's maybe an error of me to focus on it too much. But I mean, obviously the turn with Spider Bomb and Bomb Toss, right? Like that was maybe a little bit.
Yeah.
Rather than sending that all face, like.
I don't think that mattered too much, but I think that also like to be noted, Staz did have 2 Sea Giants in his deck, and Sea Giant at any point there would be a 0 mana 8/8.
Yeah.
So I think that Staz could have drawn better even, right? It wouldn't even like, this wasn't even like the highest potential of his draws. And I would say that che0nsu did draw pretty well there. So it's interesting to look at when you look at it from a different perspective like that,
Yeah, and I think Staz's overall game plan seemed pretty solid in just trying to make the Mech Hunter's life difficult. Because one of the biggest weaknesses of Mech Hunter, I find, is that it can only really play in one or two ways, right? Like, it can either curve out, magnetize the mechs and go aggressive, or it can fall behind and go for missile launcher venomizer to try and pull things back later on in the game. And so by making the magnetizers difficult for the Mech Hunter, it lowers the power level so much of the deck. Like, when they can't get good magnetizers, it does basically nothing in terms of damage early on. So I think Staz did that well. I think the one thing that Staz could maybe have done a little bit differently was like the tough turns in the middle with Freezing Trap and Frost Shock, and how to really make it as difficult as possible for che0nsu to push the face damage.
Yeah, but those turns are they're very hard, and they're also like super hard even for us to like have a good perspective on what is actually the best play from. We can obviously see both hands, so we have some caster bias there, and it's just super difficult to maneuver those turns and like manage to see what do I play first, what do I play second, and I think that Staz did it in a pretty good way.
Yes, I do.
I got him there.
I agree indeed. But for this match, they are both sticking on their primary deck list. It makes sense. Staz has an anti-warrior and an anti-mage sideboard. che0nsu has an anti-warrior and an anti-question mark sideboard. Like, remove and unleash the hounds, add a deadly shot. Maybe that's anti-mage. Who knows? But they're both sticking on their primary decks anyway.
Yes, so we have an interesting mulligan for Staz here. He has the coin, which is very good for the rogue.
Very happy to see that.
I think he wants to keep one SI agent in case of the
giant
early game. Yeah, and that's like a consideration here. I personally haven't played the matchup a ton, but the giant often comes up very good in the matchup because the Mech Hunter is forced to go wide with a lot of the Goblin Bomb cards. Oh,
he keeps everything else.
Interesting keep by Staz here for sure. So basically what Staz is saying there here is that he just thinks curving out like 3 into 3 into 4 is just good enough.
Well, I mean, you said, right, if Mech Hunter falls behind, it suffers. It does not do very well at all. And so coin SI7 agent is fairly likely to pull him ahead on board, because if the play was Galvanizer, which is a very, very expectable play on turn 2, coin SI7 agent puts Staz in a fantastic spot. Even with the follow-up of SI7 agent is a great follow-up.
Yes. At the same time, I don't think this is close to the rogue power hand or anything.
Right.
So he's clearly very optimistic about the matchup, like keeping this type of hand, because this is a very, very average, mediocre hand. So he's very optimistic about the matchup, and yeah, he just wants to curve out. And I think that will work out pretty well for him, because che0nsu doesn't have too many aggressive cards. So if che0nsu doesn't have the 1 into the 2, he just doesn't do too much. Which we see it's the situation right here.
This guy's tough.
I mean, it's reasonable because there's not that many 3-drop magnetized minions. Well,
I mean, if he had the Snip Snap here, it would be...
Actually,
he would fall really behind.
No, you're right, actually.
He
Yeah,
would fall
I forgot
really
the Snip
behind.
Snap had been added in. There's Snip Snap, 2 Spider Bombs, and the 2 Venomizers as well. Maybe
I think in general...
This fell pretty far behind, actually. Yeah.
If che0nsu had the 1 into 2 there, with the 1 into 2 into 3, which is not too likely for the hunter, but not too unlikely either. You have the 2 Mecharoos that you can have. I think in the case where you actually ended up curving out the Mech Hunter, I don't think this rogue hand would have actually been enough, and I think it would have fall behind. But at the same time, he just feels very comfortable playing this rogue hand against anything that's not going 1, 2, 3 for che0nsu.
I mean, I think I agree with you that, like, the first SI7 agent, because when I'm picturing Staz's turns, pretty much no matter what che0nsu does, his hand was clearly indicating he wants to go coin SI7 agent, that's the power turn. That's the good turn for him.
Yeah.
The follow-up is what's a little bit weaker in just vanilla 3-3, vanilla 4-3. Well, I mean,
this was also
on board at least.
This was also a pretty interesting turn from Staz. He had the option there to go for the Evil Cable Rat, which would have cleared the mech 2 out of 5 times, I believe. And at the same time, it would have provided him, in the case where it doesn't clear the mech,
With a pretty good
it would have provided him with the way to activate the SI7 agent for next turn.
That's true.
But he decides to rather just go for the Blink Fox and the consistent curve, which I think is a reasonable decision in this situation, where he feels like, in worst case, the Mech Hunter can't do anything that powerful. And especially with the Secret Plan pickup, it works out great for him, because he has a another way to activate a SI7 engine this time.
Yeah, I mean, there's not... I don't know. It's difficult to say there's not many magnetization options, but like on 4, the only magnetization option on curve was replicating Menace, which wouldn't even value trade the Blink Fox. It would have just traded it evenly. So I think this was fine from
I
start.
also think we had a very good read on him not having any of the more early game magnetized.
Yeah, he didn't have
cards.
Snip Snap,
Yes.
basically, because if Snip Snap was there,
That would
you
have been snap.
Yeah.
Snap play, snip snap.
Snip Snap play.
Snip snap play. Indeed. Okay, I didn't get to see
This guy's tough.
the options here, but
Yeah.
he ended up picking Snake Trap, which is a pretty good trap in this matchup.
Snake
it
Trap's
also
just
works
good, right?
also works super well with the Sea Giant that we saw in Mulligan earlier in the game. But it could potentially draw it, so it's just a pretty good secret.
Yeah, yeah.
All the secrets in general are very strong because it's just, especially like randomly generated secrets are way stronger than just like what the secrets you
Yes.
hard on, because
Yeah, yeah.
representing secrets is actually so underrated on a very high level gameplay. Because I think that if you run secrets, it's very easy for good players to maneuver around them.
Yeah.
But if their secret is randomly generated, good players will actively maneuver around all the potential
Right.
secrets, which really hurts their play in general. So if you have secrets that are super hard for him to proc, it's just so much value because your
Yeah.
opponent just has to play suboptimal to play around a bunch of different secrets that is possible from the random secret.
Right, because like the hard ones to trigger, like for example, if Staz doesn't play many minions or che0nsu's going all face, he might not think it's Snake Trap, so maybe he's like, it could be Rat Trap, so I just can't play 3 cards in a turn. Like, even if it's not procced, it can still be really annoying for the person playing against the randomly generated secret.
Yes, and I would say that Staz picks up his Sap, which is probably the most important card in this matchup, I would argue.
It's up there.
Yeah, it's definitely up there. You have like your normal rogue cards with Miscreant.
Yeah, I mean,
and-
Miscreant's still the most important card, let's be
Yeah,
honest.
with Miscreant and Miscreant. But yeah, he managed to pick up the Sap also, which provides him a lot of tempo here. And also just sapping the Goblin Bomb is super annoying for che0nsu. He really wants anything else to be sapped, but since he has to magnetize the Goblin Bombs because he doesn't have any other minions on board,
Yeah.
the Sap just essentially just removes a minion.
Which is pretty nuts. It's kind of like in the Mage when you go for Conjurer's Calling on a Goblin Bomb that's been buffed up crazy, and it just gives
I
them
mean, the Death Rattle doesn't
2
even proc,
1-drops.
right? You just
Exactly.
remove it from the...
Yeah, yeah, that's true.
Remove it.
That's even better.
Just gone.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, bye-bye. But yeah, che0nsu just curving out. He's starting to run out of options at this point, and at the same time, when it goes more towards the late game, it becomes pretty hard for him to be in the game. We see that he could have potentially waited with the 6-mana card here for the 6-mana drop plus the Venomizer, turn 8, but at the same time, what does he do if he does that? He's just gonna pass every turn.
Yeah.
And yeah, passing every turn probably doesn't get there. At that point, Staz just realizes that, oh, he's trying to set up this, so he just manages to play around it. And yeah, he just has to go for the pressure plan. We have a potential for a Leroy Unleash in this game if che0nsu draws the Leroy.
It's true.
He didn't tracking over the Leroy again, did he?
I don't think he did.
Yeah, I don't think he did either. you always tracking over the Leroy. So he should be fine when it comes to that.
I mean,
Fun fact, the evil Cable Rat in the Blink Fox is a beast, I
Really?
think. Yes.
Wow.
So the Beast Ref isn't that bad. It's an option.
Is probably Lightning Storm is what I was looking at, because like che0nsu does have the ability to go super wide on board, and Staz could really struggle to deal with that with either Snip Snap or Replicating Menace. But Claw is tempting too. It gains you a little bit of armor while you remove.
Yes.
And I guess like because it specifically fits into his removal.
We also
list,
see that Staz here deciding to play into the good outcomes rather than the bad outcomes when it came to that faceless thing. He could have potentially gotten Lore Walker Cho, which would have been bad. And then there's a lot of stuff he could have gotten that would have been good.
like
But
the
as well-
Direwolf Alpha.
Yeah, I mean, yes. He
Yeah.
I mean, playing the 1-mana card first and then the spell afterwards.
Right. Yeah.
There's
yeah.
a lot of stuff that is good, and there's Lore Walker Cho that's bad, I think. I don't think there's anything else that's bad.
What gets better with spells off the?
Mana Worm,
Worm.
Dart Frog. There's probably some more. There's Sorcerer Apprentice.
That's fair.
There's a couple. There might be some more too. But yeah, che0nsu just falling super behind her, and I don't know, he doesn't really have any good plays. It might be that he's supposed to, in this situation, just...
Go face.
Yeah, just go for the Leroy top deck
Yeah.
outcome now. Like, develop a Goblin Bomb, potentially buff the Goblin Bomb, push 2 phase, together with the Hero Power,
Yeah.
also 4 phase. And then...
I mean...
Are you on a Leroy out for the win? I think you actually are on a Leroy out for the win then. Yes, you are, right? Considering that Staz will have 4 minions on board, you are on a Leroy out for the win. So, I think he's going to go for that.
Yeah, I think this seems smart. Like, Staz does not have that much healing in the deck. Obviously, with the 2 life drinks we saw last game could be pretty devastating if they find a Spirit of the Shark as well. But he's not running Ziliax as the main point, so che0nsu in with a reasonable chance of getting the Leroy out. Especially, as you said, with the combo of summoning 2 whelps.
So there's some different options there. None of them are very, very good. Do you have any potential Stolen Steel targets that could be very good here, Derek?
True Silver Champion, I guess, would be the dream, right? To gain a bit of extra health.
Yeah,
Or like just Gorehowl, kill your opponent.
Yeah, I don't have everything on the top of my head right now, but but the other cards were not very good. So I think what he wants to do here is, with the Walk the Plank, is that he potentially wants to play around a Venomizer Missile Launcher combo again.
That seems smart.
Because it feels like that is one of the way he loses. But
Yes.
he also picks, this Battle Rage can actually draw a million cards.
I mean, is that what he wants to spend
now
his
that
mana on?
now that he also has the Walk the Plank, wait, it could draw like, didn't he draw a million cards?
He could have drawn a million cards. Well, he could have drawn 4 cards here, right?
Yeah,
That felt better to me.
that felt better to me too.
Yeah. I think, like, I mean, the point you were going to say was that by picking the Walk the Plank, he's already got
Well,
a removal card.
technically, che0nsu could play around the Walk the Plank, but he would never play around
But
the
you'd
Walk
never
the Plank.
trade, right? Like,
Yeah, he could trade and then damage his own minions
Yeah,
to
yeah.
play around the Walk Plank, but that seems
that
super...
seems terrible.
Yes. So
I mean, it does mean that, like,
I don't know.
it stops the death rattle, so the 2 damage that goes face, maybe the Hex, like, heals him for 2, kind of.
Staz also just doesn't set up lethal here, so
Yeah.
he gives his opponent more chance of drawing cards. If he would have picked the Battle Rage, not only would he be able to maybe play the Battle Rage this turn, he would have also potentially gotten to play it next turn.
Yeah. I don't like that pick.
But at the same time, Hex is Hex is insanely good versus this deck with all the Death Rattles and all the clunky minions to deal with. So I mean, it makes sense, but it might have been that.
I think che0nsu's pretty clearly on a face plan, right? Like,
Yes, he's on a face plan. Yes.
going counter aggression from Staz, I think, is the best way to counteract that aggression plan.
Yes. It's gonna be a bit like we could have just magnetized. Like now, che0nsu can just make like we didn't even trade a mix, right? So now che0nsu can just make
Well,
the
he
decision.
knows it's not freezing trap now, right?
Yeah, he knows it's not freeze trap, so he's probably just gonna go
Yes.
go face now and just don't respect any burn, which is super risky, but it's the only way he wins.
And to be fair to Staz,
now
this Hex is insane now.
Well, at the same time, like there might be that Hex is just too slow now. Now he's just left dead to both Leroy and. But he draws the Leroy, I think. Yeah, that's Leroy.
Yo, there it is.
And he gets it off the top. But at the same time, if he would have picked
He
the
would have
Battle
been
Rage,
much more
he
likely
would have been
to
much
get-
likely to hit this, right?
Yeah.
So, I'm not sure. The Hex, I don't know. It's hard though because he has to kind of decide what he wants to play around here. If he wants to play around Magnetize into the Leroy. Or I mean, no, he wants to play around Magnetize into the burn with Unleash or Leroy, or he wants to play around when he doesn't have that and just goes for development, right? I don't know, it was a very hard decision, and it paid off for him there.
It did, and since you're teaching me a lot of stuff about Hearthstone, I'm going to teach you a little thing about casting. You're going about that all wrong. You be very results-oriented because it would have been better there, and you say you were made the right choice 100% of the time. That's how you do it.
Okay. I got it for next time, Derek.
Yeah. You're too much of a player. You're giving too much good analysis and correct statements here, that's not how we do this.
Okay. I'll try to do better. Sorry, Derek. Sorry.
Forgiven this once. But for Staz, getting himself a victory there, pulling him up to now, what would that be, a 3-6 record, given that was his 9th game played, puts him in still with a chance of going through to the top 3 contention for playoffs, even though it's looking pretty unlikely. It's
yeah,
not the
so
worst
his
record.
best case now is him finishing off with an 8-6 record, which might be enough. Yeah, very likely to be enough, but a lot of the different scenarios ends with third place being decided by an 8-6 tiebreaker, I think. So he's still in a shot to get there, and he definitely shouldn't give up. So yeah, he's just got to keep going and keep performing in the upcoming weeks, and maybe he'll have a shot on making the comeback. And it would be insane if he actually made it, because he had a very rough start, and making the comeback would be really impressive for him.
It would indeed, but for che0nsu on the other side, I mean, it's looking like it's not really going to happen now.
Yeah, now
1-8.
He's essentially eliminated at this point, so I think che0nsu just has to take it as it is and try to develop his temp for Season 2, because there's no relegation in Season 1, so he's all good there, and he just has to play some more Hearthstone and just get back his confidence for Season 2 and be ready for that, because that's going to be maybe, it depends on his goals and stuff, but a more important season when it comes to in terms of relegation also being a factor.
Yeah, I would definitely agree there. But we've had a little talk about Staz, and now we're going to have a talk with Staz. He's here on the line. Can you hear us?
Yes.
Excellent. Very well done, mate. That was a pretty cool series of Hearthstone to see up against the Mech Hunter. Now that you are up to a slightly better record at 3-6, how are you feeling about that game and your time in Grandmasters in general?
I think I still got a long way to go to qualify to get to top 3, and regarding that game, I think I could have played some turns better. I'm not sure on most of my plays I think for the first game.
Yeah, I mean, there were a couple of really difficult decisions. I know that me and Casper were talking in particular about the Battle Rage versus Hex pick. We were really not sure about what the way to go for that one was, because I mean, if you hadn't got the Leroy, maybe the Hex would have been really good on the big Snip Snap minion, but it was super close.
Yeah, I was also thinking of the Battle Rage, of getting the Battle Rage just to get more burst from my deck. But I think the Hex is much safer pick. Sorry.
Yeah, so have you tested a lot versus the Mech Hunter build, and how do you feel about the matchup in general and Mech Hunter as a deck?
Yeah, I played dozens of game against Mech Hunter, but I'm still not sure. I think it's around 50-50, but I think different players have different opinions regarding that matchup.
That's pretty different to what we've been thinking with the Rogue. We're thinking you're in a really good spot against the Mech Hunter.
Yeah, we thought we were in a very good spot. You even have both the Sept tech and the Sea Giants, which we both think are very strong in the matchup. So having Mech Hunter been doing pretty poorly in the previous weeks.
Yeah.
Hearing that it's like only 50% from testing here is a bit surprising, for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, we want to thank you for giving us your time on this interview as well. Very well done getting up to a slightly more respectable record at 3-6 now. We wish you the best of luck in your future games of Grandmasters, and have a good evening.
All right, thank you.
Always nice to hear from Staz. He's one of the players that I always like to see when we come up to these, well, the Asia Pacific tour stops last year, and getting to see him in Grandmasters as well. I think it's a well-deserved spot for a player who, outside of his win WSG, hasn't got enough recognition, I think, as he deserves. But I think that is going to be us mostly, yeah, all done now, ready for a break after our second game. Almost ready to head into our feature match of the day, which is going to be Frosty up against Surrender. Again, our feature match that you're not going to want to miss.
That's going to be another Hunter versus Rogue, right?
That's true. Is it another Mech Hunter?
I think this is a mid-range Hunter from Frosty, so it will be a bit of a different matchup, but same thing. Hunter versus Rogue, and that has proven to be a very Rogue favorite in the recent weeks. But here we also see that Staz doesn't think the matchup is that favorite.
Right.
So we'll see how it goes.
We will indeed. I'm sure we'll get some more excellent analysis from our world champion Hunter Ace in the upcoming game. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with the next game.